It's the Michael Patrick Leahy Show, broadcasting live from downtown Nashville. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
And welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. We are indeed broadcasting live from our studios in downtown Nashville. We're going to shift gears and talk about the H-1B visa controversy that just kind of erupted over the past couple of days. My view on this whole thing is first things first, right? What should we do? Well, the first thing we need to do, I kind of agree with Tim Burchett and with President Trump. Let's reelect Mike Johnson as Speaker. I'm not really a big fan of Johnson, but who would be a better Speaker? Who would be able to become Speaker in, with 2 days' notice? I don't think it's going to happen. What is first thing first? The first thing first is on January 6th, when the joint session of Congress convenes, they need to certify the election. That's the priority. You can see a weird scenario if they got a big fight over the speaker and the certification's delayed and something crazy happens. Look, we're in the land of crazy happening. So, okay, he wouldn't be my first choice, but he's the guy there right now. So I agree with President Trump on this. Vote for Johnson and get him in. And look, and again, it's 100 days. The next 100 days matter. And in an ideal world, you might want somebody other than Johnson. Great, but we don't live in an ideal world. We live in the world of here and now. So, having said that, so now we've got this little kerfuffle about the H-1B visa program. I am not an expert on the H-1B visa program, but it was sort of brought up by Vivek Ramaswamy, who said, we need to expand it. Vivek and Elon, what's the first thing you need to do? You need to focus on the Department of Government Efficiency. Don't focus with the H-1B1 thing, which is a bit of a mess, I think. Steve Bannon really thinks it's a mess, and we have this clip of Bannon talking about it on his program Saturday. Here we go. Steve Bannon on H-1B visas.
Let me just state this. The H-1B visas, I've been working on this for 10 years. It's very hard because this is central. It's not just central to the economics of what they do in Silicon Valley. The Hate America crowd, and they hate America, the Hate America crowd there. And when I say hate America, they hate the United States of America, the nation state of America, and American citizens. They believe in some sort of techno-feudal situation like was in Italy back, I don't know, in the 14th and 15th century. These kind of city-states. What they want is a network. They want a network where they're like a city-state, control the network. And there's a bunch of serfs that work for them. Not American citizens, but serfs, indentured servants. That's what they want, and they're not going to get that. We're going to win this fight. If you think that this audience in the MAGA movement, the hoplites, the Grundoons, the fixed bayonet crowd that fought the steal of 2020 and then had President Trump's back in the darkest days of 21 and were with him the entire time, particularly because he was right on the basic issues that were causing the destruction of our beloved republic, are going to now, after a massive come-from-behind victory, overwhelming victory, just sit there and roll over while the country's torn apart by oligarchs. It's not going to happen. And I always give full respect to Elon. Elon was absolutely central. Elon understood that this was about getting out low propensity, low information voters, and that the army of people from the Turning Points and from War Room and other groups, you guys that were did the election integrity and then did all the door-to-door canvassing and get the vote, that you were essential. He did write the check, and that gets him a seat at the table. I've said that from the beginning, although I fundamentally disagree with him on major issues like the Chinese Communist Party, like transhumanism, and like the situation around immigration. But they're going to make this bold. Let me just restate something. As a fact, the H-1B visa program is a total and complete scam from its top to the bottom. And Elon's put out this tweet that, all his companies have depended upon that. Now, we'll go dig out the information from public documents and just I'd like you to publish, we would like you to publish every engineer that you've brought in on HB1 visa and let us determine, let's just see the information and see if American citizens could not fill those billets.
Okay, so let's talk about the H-1B visa thing, which is, again, back to first things first. That's not the first thing we deal with, right? The first thing we deal with, frankly, is deporting all the illegal aliens in this country. H-1B is a legal immigration program, asterisk. It appears to have been abused in a significant way. Again, I'm not an expert on this. This is why we've got Bannon, and then in our next segment, we'll play something from Mark Krikorian from the Center for Immigration Studies. And then I've got this fascinating thread from a fellow by the name of Robert Sterling. He's kind of a CFO info guy. He calls himself a CFO investor and sneakerhead. But he posted something fascinating. I tried to get Robert on the program to talk about he calls it an H-1B data mega thread. So just to basically kind of outline it, this is authorized, it's a law authorized in the 1990s. It allows tech workers of particular skill sets to come in the United States on what's called H-1B visas. It is supposed to be, like for this past year, 85,000 are supposed to come in, but I'm reading now that it's like 800 and some odd thousand, 10 times the number, have actually come in. Now, Spencer and talk about a mega thread. Sterling, rather. Robert Sterling is a guy. Went into the data. The data on the H-1B program is available. He posted on Saturday evening at 7:09 p.m. this chart about the H-1B visa program. It's got 10 million views. And he doesn't have a lot. He's got like 120,000 followers, which is fine, but it's very, very fascinating. Okay, so what he said is he downloaded 5 years of H-1B data from the U.S. Department of Labor website and spent the day crunching data. He said he went in with an open mind, but to be honest, he's now extremely skeptical of how this program works, and talked about what he found about it. What it looks like is that, at least from this data, what it looks like is that tech companies are importing tech workers at lower wages than they would pay American workers. That's basically kind of what it looks like. Okay, so the number of total certified applications for this thing since under the Biden administration. Again, supposedly this thing was, the annual limit is 85,000. I'm just going to show you the numbers right now. 562,000 came in fiscal 20. 805,000 came in fiscal 21. 611,000 came in fiscal 22. 630,000 came in fiscal 23. 868,000 came in fiscal 25. This is like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years where the total should have been 5 times 85, about 425,000. But instead, they've got 1.4, 2, 2.8. They've got like 3.3 million people have come in under this program, which is about 9 times what it should have been. Well, that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 when we get back. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy. Back after this.
Hey there, this is Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of The Glock Store. As a proud sponsor of this show, you may have heard Michael Patrick Leahy mention us a few times over the past 4 years. But today, it's me on the radio telling you how pleased we are to be associated with Michael Patrick Leahy and his dedication to the highest levels of professional journalism. Michael Patrick Leahy has been threatened with jail time in bringing the true facts about that Nashville Covenant shooting to his listening audience. Michael Patrick Leahy, you keep doing what you're doing, and we here at the Glock Store will keep sponsoring your show for the good of Nashville and the entire country. And I'm personally inviting all of your listeners to come visit and shoot at the Glock Store. It's where Michael Patrick Leahy learned to shoot a gun for the first time and where he bought his own personal Glock 19. I'm Lenny McGill, founder and CEO of the Glock Store here in Nashville, just minutes from the airports, worth the drive from anywhere, and a proud sponsor of Michael Patrick Leahy and the Tennessee Star Report.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. We're going to talk about H-1B visas here in this segment. And again, I'm not an expert on this stuff, but, you know, it's the topic du jour. It's, I think, a bit of an unforced error to make this the big issue before Donald Trump takes office. I think our priority needs to be to deport all the criminal illegal aliens that have been allowed under the Biden administration. And then more of those folks. H-1B visa I'm very skeptical of this program. And I'm going to read here a little of the data that this fellow Robert Sterling put out late Saturday night. If the whole pitch here is, yeah, we got to bring those tech geniuses in. Okay. Because we don't have enough tech geniuses here in America. Well, Sterling did some analysis of this. And remember now, we're supposed to only have 85,000 people a year coming into this. And it's been averaging about 700 to 800,000 a year, almost 10 times over the past 5 years. Obviously, that's a bit of an abuse. You think? Now, if we were just bringing in tech geniuses, that would be reflected in the amount of money being paid to them, right? So what's interesting about this is he looked at this data and he put wage rate categories over 250, 200 to 250, 150 to 200, 125 to 150, 100 to K to 125, 75K to 100K, and under 75K. Now, if you're looking at geniuses, right, you would say, oh, okay, we want to take a look at, we want to get geniuses here. Yeah, a genius would be making over 250K, wouldn't they? I would think, in tech. And most of these H-1B things are coming in various forms of tech. There are other accountants and others, but I think like tech makes up about 80% of these H-1B visas that have been authorized. But it looks like less than 1% of these people have come in and made over 250,000. Interestingly enough, 22% made under 75,000 in fiscal 20. It's about 16% now. And another, 33% made under 100, between 75 and 100K back in fiscal 20. So more than half of these people made under 100,000 in fiscal 24 and fiscal 20. In fiscal 24, that number was 37%. These are not tech geniuses coming in. Okay. These are basically lower paid coders and tech support types. That's what they are, right? And that's not really what this program is supposedly about. We talked we had Mark Krikorian, Center for Immigration Studies, who's been here in our studio, talked to Steve Bannon about this. This is a little bit lengthy, but it's a pretty good explanation about the H-1B visa program. We're going to play this, and I'll jump in and give you a comment about it along the way. Here we go. Mark Krikorian, Saturday.
I want to bring Krikorian in because he knows the facts. Krikorian, Mark, correct me if I'm wrong, and if my team can throw up the Guardian story I sent this morning. There's a Guardian story in April of 17 that we finally got an executive order signed, and that's after 3 or 4 months of working every day on this thing by President Trump. But that executive order kind of set us in the right direction, but never actually got executed. To give us the history, just from the Trump era, of the H-1B visa and why this is still an issue today, because I thought we put this thing to bed. Because here's my point. I want zero. When I was at Breitbart, we covered the story and of the Disney workers in Orlando that had to train the H-1B visa folks coming in to take their jobs. And that thing went viral. It was one of the reasons President Trump won the Republican primary in 2016, and one of the major reasons he was president of these United States. Mark Krikorian from CIS.
Well, the place you got to start is that these H-1B visas are supposedly temporary for skilled workers. The problem is we give them out by lottery. In other words, they're numerically capped. There's 85,000 of them a year, but we give them out randomly to people who submit. We get thousands of applications, and so what you end up with is a lot of mediocre talents. What President Trump did in that executive order that you had worked on was to say, okay, fellas in DHS, come up with a regulation that gives the visas out based on the highest salary first. In other words, the people that actually the companies say they value by offering them the most money. It sat in DHS for a long time. They were debating whether they were allowed to do this by law. Then they wrote the regulation, and it just sat in the White House, because regulations have to be approved within the Office of Management and Budget. And you were there, not me, but as I understand it, people in the White House sat on that thing. It was they finally pulled the trigger on it like a month before the end of the administration. And what happened is Biden just canceled the thing. So this obvious rule that would wipe out these companies that were used like Disney visas never happened, and it still hasn't happened.
Okay, so let me just stop here for a moment. This is a point of fact, which, again, not an expert on this, and I'm trying to figure it out here in real time. So Krikorian, he's the guy who knows about this. He referenced again this 85,000 limit, and he took us to basically the end of the Trump administration in fiscal 2020. Now we've got this data from Robert Sterling that said, 85,000 is the limit, but the number of certified and approved is like 10 times that, 9 times that, 10 times that. Okay, let's continue with Krikorian and Bennett.
This was even a compromise inside the White House at first. For folks like myself, the hardliners said, just do away with the entire program. Yeah. There's other programs out there. If Einstein comes around, maybe we'll fit in. But this is, to me, the people that say, we got to suck up the best and the brightest from the world. I said, that's like imperialism. That's imperialism, because we have to allow and help these countries make themselves great, or you're going to have a world on fire. One of the problems, you got all the capital and all the talent go to certain nodes, right? And the oligarchs feed off that, using these people as indentured servants. But even then, agreeing to the meritocracy point, President Trump pushed that. When President Trump looked around, because remember, he's flying at 60,000 feet because he's running the frickin' world. When he found out it wasn't done after the election, he said, what in the hell? And that's why in December of 2020, and folks, you remember this show? In December 2020, it was called War Room Impeachment. And we were, it was basically war room, but that was the firestorm of the election, of stealing of the election. The pandemic was still there. President Trump had a couple, 3 things on his mind, but realized this has never been implemented, Mark. And that's why he said, get this thing done. I don't know how this thing got held up. And this is the thing about the people, not just the White House, but DHS and the administration, the administrative and deep state, that don't want any changes. And they report to the easy money overlords on Wall Street and the tech oligarchs. Krikorian.
Yeah, I think you're showing right stuff is actually a useful example, because who helped with our rocket program? It was German scientists. And so that's a real thing there. But we had a program to bring German scientists here to help with that stuff. Over 15 years. You know how many people we brought here? 1,600 people, a little more than 100 a year. That kind of tech immigration is actually something that everybody's for. But what we're not, that's nothing like what we're doing now. We're doing mass foreignization of our tech industries. And that's not, it's bad for American workers. And it's also bad for American security, because this is an essential national security area, broadly, the whole tech area. And we're, we're relying on foreign sources of talent instead of growing our own talent. There's really no excuse for it.
Yeah, and let me just close off with that. I agree completely. The example is, let's bring in the real high-level geniuses. But as we saw from the Robert Sterling data, rather, when he looked at all of these H-1B visas that have been approved in the past 5 years, they're bringing people in at really, most of the people coming in are at relatively low wages. That's what it's about. It's about bringing people in low wages so there can be more profits. It's not about bringing the geniuses in. I'm all for bringing geniuses in so we can have rockets and we can go to the moon. That doesn't seem to be what's going on. All right, we're going to shift gears. When we come back, the great Tom Pappert will join us. Do you have to fill out those forms or go to prison if you're a small business guy? Not yet. He'll explain why when we get back.
My fellow Americans, I was this close, very close, to buying from the lumber yards. These are sick people. But I turned my head at the last second, and I saw a big, beautiful ad for D.T. McCall's. These are highly respected people. If I had not turned my head at the last second, I would have been ripped off at some lumber yard for $200 in hidden charges, and D.T. McCall & Sons are never going to do that. They'd never do that to you. These are great people. I've known them for a long time. They have great deals, and I just have to say, nobody knows deals like I do. D.T. McCall & Sons has locations in Lebanon, Carthage, Lafayette, Cookeville, and Franklin, and they have been family-owned in Middle Tennessee for over 100 years. These are tremendous people. D.T. McCall & Sons. Check out one of their stores today.
Impersonator not endorsed by Donald Trump.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
We are joined on our Zoom Newsmaker line right now by our lead political reporter at the Star News Network and the Tennessee Star, Tom Pappert. Good morning, Tom.
Good morning, Michael.
So, can you unravel for us this bizarre, terrible law called the Corporate Transparency Act? When did it become law? How did it become law? And what are the elements of the law?
Well, the Corporate Transparency Act has been kind of inching its way toward being effective for a while now. It had the support of Democrats. It was famously supported by Kamala Harris. And what this law would do is mandate that small business owners, anybody who has, say, an LLC that makes less than $5 million per year, grosses less than $5 million per year, is required to file what's called a beneficial ownership report, doxing the owners of the company to the federal government, the Internal Revenue Service, under penalty of $250,000 a year in fines and up to, I believe it's 5 years in prison for not telling the government who owns your company.
And so it's only companies with revenues under $5 million, which is like 33 million small businesses. If you're a privately held company over $5 million in sales, you don't have to do this. This was the brainchild of outgoing Senator Sherrod Brown, the Democrat from Ohio. They slipped this in the December 2000 National Defense Authorization Act. And Trump didn't like it, didn't like the entire act. He vetoed it. But the Democrats in the House and in the Senate overrode his veto. And, you know, this was like a 5,000-page bill. And they slipped this Corporate Transparency Act into it. It was scheduled to go into effect. In other words, every small business owner in America had to submit their statement of beneficial ownership to this group called the FinCEN, part of Department of Treasury, by, wait for it, the day after tomorrow, January 1st. That's in the law. It is a law of the United States of America. But tell us about all of the back and forth, and let's lead with this. For our small business owners out there, are they required now to submit this filing by Wednesday of this week? And if they don't, do they face prison sentences now? Or is there a bit of a respite? Tell us what the deal is.
No, there is indeed a bit of a respite, and it's been an ongoing legal battle since December 3rd. These things always happen at Christmas time, Michael. I don't know how the government manages to do this, but on December 3rd, a court in the 5th District, a lower judge, came in and said, well, no, we're going to do an injunction. People are suing. We're going to see how the lawsuits play out. The law is paused. Well, the federal government, the Biden administration, didn't like this. On December 23rd, they went to an appeals court in the 5th District. The appeals court said, no, we're going to let this law go into effect, but because of this confusion, we're going to give business owners until January 13th.
Okay. So let me see where we were before there's another development. So a whole number of small business owners had filed suit in federal district court saying, it's none of your business who owns my company. And this idea that if I tell you who owns my company, it's going to cut down on terrorism is ridiculous. That's basically what they said. That's the rationale for it. And so on December 3rd, a judge basically said in one of those cases, no, we're not going to do that. We're going to pause it indefinitely. On the 23rd, this appeals court said, oh no, it's back on, but because of the confusion, you got till January 13th to comply. What happened next?
So the first 5th District Court of Appeals judges who said this was a 3-judge panel. They are the ones who initially received the case. It then goes to a second panel of 3 judges on the 5th District Court of Appeals, and that panel went back and said, no, actually, the guy on December 3rd got it right. We're going to freeze this thing until we figure out whether it's going to become law or not through the courts, which now means that business owners do not have to file this on either the 1st or the 13th, pending the court's eventual decision. And then, of course, it could very easily make its way to the Supreme Court if the court sides with the federal government.
Yeah, this is an invasion of privacy. It's none of their dadgum business. It's going to have no impact on terrorism. I hate this law. And they snuck it in. This was not debated at all. They just snuck it in and they jammed it through in one of the omnibus bills back in 2020. And then they overrode President Trump's veto. Now, a little curveball here for you, Tom. Let's think this through. The defendant in this case is the Department of Justice, right? Or the Department of Treasury, represented by the Department of Justice.
Right.
Something's going to happen on January 20th, right? Donald Trump will become the 47th president of the United States. Am I overreaching to think that after January 20th, whenever Pam Bondi is confirmed as Attorney General, I think that'll happen before the end of the month, maybe sooner. Will Pam Bondi say, we're not going to defend this case, and we're going to basically allow the court injunctions to remain indefinitely? What do you think the Department of Justice will do on this particular case?
I think that would be the intelligent thing to do. I think that would be the correct thing to do. And I think Pam Bondi will probably do that. But this is going to be an early test, just like releasing the Covenant Killer Manifesto and so many other things. This is going to be an early test to find out, is Pam Bondi an institutionalist who is going to preserve the documents that say the government gets to know who owns your business? Or is Pam Bondi going to side with President Trump and America First? There's zero indication that she will not do that, but it remains to be seen, and we're not going to have a very long window for her to get this done.
I got 2 words for you. Ready? Bill Barr. So, Bill Barr, very disappointing as Attorney General. And you may recall, back in 2015, the Tennessee General Assembly filed a lawsuit against the federal government saying, we do not want to participate in the refugee resettlement program. That's another immigration program where they were sending, at that time, refugees from Syria into the United States and Somalia. They still do, to a degree. Like 125,000 a year come in from foreign countries under this refugee resettlement program. And under the Biden administration, under Obama, they were basically from Islamist-oriented terrorist countries that hate our guts. But the Tennessee lawsuit said Tennessee doesn't want to participate in the refugee resettlement program, and don't send us your refugees. When Bill Barr came in, this was to me shocking. When Bill Barr came in, because he was an institutionalist, this would be January of 2017, as Attorney General, I thought he would withdraw the Department of Justice from that case and allow Tennessee to not participate in the refugee resettlement program. Boy, was I surprised. Bill Barr said, oh, no, Tennessee can't do that. And in the end, the federal courts agreed with him. But I I hope, and I think you're probably right. I think that Pam Bondi would be more likely than not to withdraw the Department of Justice objection to, in essence, ending the Corporate Transparency Act. But it will be a test, right? When do we think we'll know how all this will play out?
Well, we still do not have a schedule from the Fifth District Court of Appeals as to when exactly we're going to get the next hearing, but we do know, as you said earlier, this is on an expedited schedule. They know that this was meant to go into effect, as you said, the day after tomorrow, and that January 13th may no longer be a realistic date. So I do expect we're going to get some quick movement on this, and that's why it's going to be a very early and interesting test for Pam Bondi, and it really comes down to, is the Department of Justice something that operates out of the executive branch, the DOJ we're talking about, not the Supreme Court? Is that an executive part of government, or do they exist, does the Attorney General exist just to be a rubber stamp to protect what Congress does?
Well, here's the other part about this. And again, yeah, it became a law, but it became a law in the most awful, anti-democratic way possible. 5,000 pages, they slip it in at the last moment. I think most Americans would oppose this law. Most Americans do oppose this law, but it is law. I think what might happen is we might get a final decision, let's say by the end of January, from the Court of Appeals. And if it goes our way, and they say, no, we're not going to have you comply with it, then the question would become, does the Department of Justice reach out to the Supreme Court to get them to rule on it? That will be a tell right there. If the Court of Appeals rules our way and the Department of Justice doesn't ask the Supreme Court to review, that will be good. The other thing is, what if it doesn't go our way? What does the Department of Justice do at that time? We would appeal it, right? The plaintiffs would appeal it to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court might or might not take it up. Then the question becomes one of implementation. And we've got, Scott Bessent as Secretary of Treasurer, who I think will be confirmed, and then Pam Bondi. What do you think happens in that scenario, Tom Pappert?
Well, again, if these are good picks, and I think they are, I think President Trump learned a lot from his first term. We've seen from the Biden administration and even the Obama administration before that, you can pick and choose which laws are enforced depending on which president is in power. So I think it would be entirely up to the government as to whether or not to dox these small business owners. However, that would give us 4 years to get this thing carved out of the law books, root and stem, because you know that Kamala Harris or whatever Democrat they get in 28.
That's the next thing
to make it work.
On the list of things to be done, let's say on day 99 of the first 100 days, Congress should repeal this law. That's my take on it. Your thoughts in our final 30 seconds, Tom?
Absolutely. And if they don't, I could see this becoming a major issue in 2028 as Republicans look to primary some of their rhino members of the party.
Tom Pappert, excellent as always. Keep us posted on this very important story.
Will do, Michael. Thank you as always.
All right. When we come back, Greenland. Do we want it or do we not? I want it. I'll explain why.
Welcome back to the Michael Patrick Leahy Show. Now, here's Michael Patrick Leahy.
Welcome back. In the previous hour, I threw cold water, ice perhaps you might say, on the idea that Canada could become our 51st state. Basically because they're a bunch of whiny socialist, European socialists. Asterisk. Except maybe Alberta. Maybe Alberta, that one province, could come into the United States. I would welcome them, but even there, they have a bunch of whiny European socialists, although they have more cowboys there as well. Now, I have a very different view on Greenland. Greenland, as you know, is adjacent to the northernmost province, or the territories, on the eastern side of Canada, and it's very strategically important. It's bigger than Alaska. It has 50,000 people on it. It's a territory of Denmark. It has a prime minister. 80% of it's covered by an ice sheet, but it has very valuable minerals. And the Chicoms have an ownership interest in companies taking those minerals out. I think we should buy Greenland and make it a U.S. territory. That is in our strategic interest. Not only do I think that, but former Trump advisor Robert O'Brien thinks so. Here he is talking about Greenland.
Wow. Let's talk about Greenland, because President Trump's also talking actively about Greenland. What's the latest there?
Well, the latest is Greenland is a highway from the Arctic all the way to North America to the United States. It's strategically very important to the Arctic, which is going to be the critical battleground of the future, because as the climate gets warmer, the Arctic is going to be a pathway that maybe it cuts down on the usage of the Panama Canal. And the Russians and Chinese are all over the Arctic. Now, the Kingdom of Denmark owns Greenland, and they've got an obligation to defend Greenland. And so President Trump said, if you don't defend Greenland, we'll buy it, and we'll defend it. But we're not going to defend it for free and let you and not develop Greenland and not extract the minerals and oil and resources of Greenland. And while we defend it, Denmark gets rich, and the King of Denmark becomes even wealthier. Denmark is now on the front lines of the war against Russia and China. They're like the Baltic states, they're like Poland, because of their vast territory in Greenland. And so they've got to defend Greenland, and if they can't defend it, we're going to have to, and we're not going to do it for free. So the Danes can either put the frigate that's necessary there, they can put the air wings, they can put the missiles in Greenland, and they can put the infantry there that they need to defend the country, just like the Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia are doing in Eastern Europe. Or they can pay us to do it, and we'll do it, but they can cover the cost of the defense. Or if they don't want to do either of those things, they can let us buy Greenland from them, and Greenland can become part of Alaska. I mean, the native people in Greenland are very closely related to the people of Alaska, and we'll make it a part of Alaska. But they can't have it. The U.S. can't defend it for nothing, and the days of the U.S. taxpayer defending Western Europe and kingdoms in Europe and defending their empire for nothing. Those days are over, and we love the Danish people. They're great. Denmark's a wonderful place. Copenhagen is a wonderful city.
Okay, enough of that. Denmark is not going to be able to defend Greenland. I mean, come on. They're the Danish. They got they make bakery products, right? They're not going to be able to defend Greenland. And look, this is where the battle's going to be. It's going to be in the Arctic. I think was very interesting there, which I hadn't heard this idea before. Perhaps has some merit. Asterisk. I don't think it would be the top of my list for a couple of reasons I'll talk about here in a second. So O'Brien says, buy Greenland and make it part of Alaska because they're up in the northern tundra there. Okay. I don't think that's really practical because it's a fur piece from Alaska to Greenland. There are some similarities in the sense that, we bought Alaska in 1867 from Russia. That's a great move, by the way. It was called Seward Folly at the time, but it was very far-reaching. Alaska has a population, about 700,000? Greenland, though, very different. It's even further north, and if you think about it, parts of Alaska are, as difficult environments as Greenland. Parts of it, the northern parts of it, but parts of it on the coast, not quite the same. Culturally, I think it's quite different. And I think that the best option here would be to buy Greenland from Denmark. They say they don't want to sell it. Okay. They can't defend it. So that's ridiculous. I don't think they got to sell it. It's in our hemisphere. And look, we need to go back to a more invigorated Monroe Doctrine. That's what the Trump doctrine should be. If it's in the Western Hemisphere, it's American or dominated by America. That's just the power politics that has to be here because America is the bastion of freedom right now. There's no other place in Europe, with the exception of like the Eastern European states where there's like Poland, Hungary, the Czech Republic, Israel also has the sense of liberty. But it's America. You don't have liberty in the way we know it in the United Kingdom anymore. You don't have liberty in the way we know it in France anymore. The freedom of the Western world is totally determined by the United States of America. And we need to control Greenland. That's the raw politics of it. They have 50,000 people there. They say they don't want America here. Well, that's fine. But the choice is really going to be, do you want China running Greenland? Do you want Russia running Greenland? Or do you want the United States? Because there's a lot of valuable resources there. A lot of minerals, rare minerals that make a big difference. So, look, here's the way to go. We buy Greenland, we make it an American territory like Puerto Rico is a territory, and we put all sorts of resources into it. All sorts of resources into it, and we turn it from, frozen tundra where the lights go out half the time into a winter wonderland of free market capitalist success. What do you think of that? I think that's the way to go. And look, the Prime Minister of Greenland said, no, we don't want you. I got news for you, Mr. Prime Minister of Greenland, population 54,000. You may not want the United States of America. And historically, I know you a bunch of former Vikings that, came from Denmark. That's mostly Jews there. Your choice is be part of China or be part of America. Which do you like? You need to be part of America. There you go. When we come back, we'll talk about Tennessee, the Tennessee Bonus Hour, with our good friend Carmichael. I'm Michael Patrick Leahy.